Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something major happening down in Brazil. It's this scandal involving alleged widespread fraud, corruption too, inside the National Social Security Institute, the INSS. We've been looking through, articles, news reports, various notes, trying to piece together the facts, which are pretty complex. So our mission here to cut through that complexity, really understand what went down, who's supposedly involved, and crucially, what it all means, both for the retirees who were affected and, well, for the bigger picture in Brazil. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, and it's important to remember this isn't just like numbers on a page. It's about a system meant to support, millions of vulnerable people, retirees.
And how it was allegedly, well, twisted. Understanding this, I think, gives us a real look at systemic problems and the human cost.
Absolutely. So let's start right there with the basic issue, the thing people actually notice. What was happening with their INSS payments?
The main thing, the core complaint was unauthorized discounts, money just being taken out of their monthly benefits, money they absolutely depend on.
Exactly. And who was allegedly making these deductions?
Yeah, who's behind it?
Well, the reports are pointing towards various associations. These groups were apparently the ones making these cuts without permission. But what's really concerning, according to the sources, is how they did it. Often it was pretty small amounts, maybe our $40, all $50, that sort of thing.
Okay, so small enough that you might not catch it right away, especially if your payment fluctuates a bit anyway.
Precisely. And that seems to be part of the strategy almost. Sneaky. A small deduction like that could easily slip past somebody for a month, maybe two.
Yeah.
But the sources we looked at mentioned cases where this went on for a long, long time, sometimes up to 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah. Imagine that. 4 years, a little piece of your pension just gone every month without you agreeing to it.
Yeah.
So you take that $40 or $50, multiply it by potentially, hundreds of thousands of retirees, maybe more over years.
The scale just explodes.
It becomes absolutely massive.
Yeah.
Staggering, really.
Right. The individual hit is bad enough, but collectively. Wow. Okay, now here's where the sources say it takes a really interesting turn. This involves more than just these associations, doesn't it? It connects up to, well, politics.
Yeah, and I mean, this probably won't shock anyone listening, but according to the investigation reports, politicians are involved in this INSS fraud.
Okay.
The sources talk about this alleged system. They were getting regular payments. The term used is mesadas, basically monthly allowances. And these payments were supposedly coming from the same associations that were allegedly running the discount scam.
Monthly allowances, mesadas. Do the sources mention how much?
They do. The figure cited is an average of our $50,000 per month.
50,000 raise per month. That's a lot of money. What does that kind of money allegedly buy?
Well, yeah, it's significant. It suggests it was buying, serious influence, access. It's not a one-off payment. It's consistent. Month after month, that buys leverage. And, as the sources point out, people are already starting to call this the Mensalão do INSS.
Ah, okay. Drawing a line straight back to those other huge political bribery scandals in Brazil, the ones involving monthly payments for favors.
Exactly. That name itself, Mensalão do INSS, tells you how serious people perceive this to be. It suggests a pattern.
It definitely carries weight. So, okay, you have these alleged payments. How did that influence actually work? How did the politicians allegedly help the associations commit the fraud? What were the mechanics?
So the investigation sources, they lay out a few key ways this apparently happened. One, they allegedly put their own people, trusted allies, inside the INSS, key positions.
Okay, insiders.
Right. They also reportedly smoothed the way for meetings, direct contact between the association reps and top INSS leadership. And maybe most importantly, they allegedly leaned on INSS leaders, put pressure on them, maybe even, according to investigators, co-opted them with bribes to make sure the associations got what they needed.
So building an inside track, exerting pressure, maybe outright bribery, and the end goal of all that maneuvering, that alleged influence.
Access, plain and simple, according to the reports. Access to really sensitive retiree data.
What kind of data are we talking about here?
The sources are specific. They needed things like CPF numbers, that's like the Social Security number, full names, addresses, and critically, bank account details. Highly sensitive personal and financial info. Stuff that should be protected.
Right. And once they had that data,
then the associations could hit go on the unauthorized discount scams, target specific retirees, pull money from their accounts.
So the alleged political influence was the key to unlock the data, and the data was the key to the fraud itself.
Exactly. The data was the linchpin. Couldn't do it without that specific, sensitive information.
Just how widespread is this alleged political link? How many politicians are reportedly being looked at?
The investigation sources are pointing to at least 15 federal deputies and senators, people currently in office, allegedly involved.
15. Wow.
And what's really striking, the sources emphasize this, is how broad the political involvement seems to be. It's not just one party. Reports mention parliamentarians for the PDT. That's the party actually heading the Ministry of Social Security right now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But also members from other parties allied with the government and, importantly, from the opposition too. One source actually quotes investigators saying it involves people at the right and at the left.
So, bipartisan alleged corruption.
Yeah, the investigators reportedly said there's no worse side here when talking about the political links to these associations.
Okay, so it allegedly cuts right across the political divide. We've got the fraud hitting retirees, these alleged mesadas flowing to politicians, the whole mechanism for getting data access. What's happening with the investigation right now, and what's the potential legal fallout, especially for the politicians?
Well, federal police are deep into it, actively investigating, following the money trails, the connections.
And there was an interesting detail in the sources about the people already being investigated, the association members. What are they supposedly doing?
Yeah, reports suggest that some members from these associations, the ones under the microscope, are promising to cooperate.
Cooperate how?
They're reportedly offering to spill the beans, is the phrase used, name names, point fingers at specific parliamentarians they allegedly paid off, and even provide proof to back it up, linking them directly to the scheme.
Okay, that could really change things if they actually follow through.
Absolutely. That kind of cooperation, if it happens, could be huge for the investigation.
But let's say a politician's involvement is proven. Their path through the courts is different, isn't it? Because they're deputies or senators?
That's right. They have something called privileged forum for privilegiado in Brazil. What that means is, if there's enough evidence to prosecute them, their cases typically go straight to the Supreme Federal Court, the STF. They skip the lower courts.
Right. And there's often this, I don't know, public perception or cynicism around cases involving powerful people going to the STF. One source even kind of joked about it, right? Like quoting a movie line.
Yeah, something like, it's gone to the Supreme Court, we're free.
Exactly.
And yeah, that quote, it taps into a feeling reported in the sources, a concern, maybe, that cases involving high-level officials at the STF might move differently or more slowly than regular cases. It's tied up in the whole complexity of the legal system and this privileged forum idea.
Okay, setting aside the legal track for a second. What about the people hurt most directly, the retirees? Is the government talking about getting their money back?
Yes, there have been public statements. The Minister of Social Security, Wolny Quiroz, he said the government expects to reimburse victims well before the end of the year.
Well before the end of the year. That sounds hopeful, but maybe a bit vague.
Well, yeah. Looking closely at the sources, there isn't a hard, specific date yet for when reimbursement actually starts. And initially, there was definitely some confusion about where the money would even come from. One report flat out said, no one is saying where the money will come from.
Right. So has that been clarified? Where is the money coming from?
The minister did clarify the plan. The idea is the federal government will use union resources, basically, federal funds, to pay the victims first. Then the plan is to go after the fraudulent groups, seize their assets, sell them off, and recover the money that way. So it's not meant to be a permanent hit to the public treasury, ideally.
Okay, so pay first from federal funds, then claw back from the fraudsters' assets. Are there other steps being taken to fix the system or help people?
Yeah, a couple of things mentioned. In the Chamber of Deputies, they've fast-tracked a bill, put it on an urgency track. And this bill is specifically designed to stop these kinds of automatic deductions from INSS payments altogether, trying to close that loophole.
That seems pretty crucial.
Definitely. And also, the post office is apparently helping out, assisting victims. That service supposedly started very recently, like this Friday, according to one report.
Okay, good to hear there's some immediate help, too. Now, you mentioned the associations. There were 41 implicated initially. What's happening with them? Minister Quiroz said only a few and good ones would remain, but that got some pushback, didn't it?
It did. The sources captured that criticism. The point being made was, hang on, even having a few associations, however good, with direct access to sensitive INSS data, isn't that the core problem?
Right.
That reaction really highlights the systemic vulnerability that, allowed this whole thing to happen. Why did external groups have that kind of access in the first place?
A really fundamental question. Now, just to make things even murkier, there was something else mentioned in the sources happening around the same time all this scandal news was breaking, right? Something about the INSS systems themselves.
That's right. Yeah, amidst all the reporting on the fraud investigation, the political links, the Minister of Social Security also brought up issues with the INSS's on computer systems. Instability.
Instability caused by what?
Well, the sources report the minister mentioned the possibility of a hacker attack causing problems during this period.
A hacker attack on top of everything else.
It's presented in the reports as something mentioned by the minister, a separate potential issue happening concurrently with the scandal investigation. Just another layer of complexity.
Wow. Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. What does this whole deep dive into the INSS scandal really mean for you, our listener?
Well, what's fascinating here, I think, is how it exposes so many things at once. First, you see these huge vulnerabilities in giant public systems. Systems meant to protect vulnerable people, retirees in this case. Then you see how political influence can potentially be, well, allegedly weaponized to enable financial crime on a massive scale. And finally, it just highlights how incredibly complex and frankly uncertain the path is towards getting real accountability, especially for powerful figures, and making sure every single victim is actually made whole. And this raises a really important question, doesn't it? Beyond just getting the money back, what fundamental changes are needed to really secure these systems? Secure them against manipulation from the inside and improper access from the outside, especially when the allegations point to complicity at different levels.
Yeah, that's the core of it, isn't it? It's this picture of massive ongoing fraud, alleged involvement of politicians right across the spectrum, this complicated investigation with the whole privileged forum aspect for some, and then the government trying to manage the fallout, promising reimbursement, trying to fix the system, but with lingering uncertainties and even this mention of a possible hacker attack swirling around. It's a lot. So just to recap, we've dug into the fraud itself, the alleged mesadas, and the political influence that reportedly enabled it, the investigation's path, and the government's stated response, both for victims and the system.
Right. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Based on everything we've seen in the sources, given all these complexities, the alleged payments, the special legal track for politicians, the question marks around who exactly knew what and when, the lack of a firm reimbursement date yet, and that fundamental issue of data access, just consider. In a situation this tangled, this deeply embedded, what would genuine full accountability actually look like? And what would it take to be truly confident that the system is secure for the future?